So thank you all for coming to another one of our office hours session. My name is Matt, and we have a bunch of members from the team here today to help us out. Today's topic is combining Exact Forms Plus and QB Courier. It's going to be a good one. This is a very, very popular use case, something that we get quite often, I would say. And in fact, I have several clients right now who are asking me for this video. So, this is serving many purposes for us, and we definitely hope that you guys get value out of this and can replicate this yourselves. So I'm going to go with maybe a last call for open forum. All right. Seems like everyone's eager to get started. Me too. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my other screen, and we will jump right into this. All right. So you guys all should see the Juice Cloud, correct? Yep, I'm gonna go, yeah. And I navigated to our Juice Tech Inc. account, and you can see that every add-on is active. Now, for most of you, you're gonna see a couple add-ons active, probably Exact Forms Plus and probably Courier if you're coming to this meeting. But if you don't, the best way to go about starting a trial is either hitting the Start Trial button on any of these add-ons or clicking into specifically something like Courier. But today, what we're going to hope to show you, and I have not done it yet, so we're going to be doing this live, is in my handy dandy lease management application, we're going to install another Exact Forms Plus template with a new sample file. We're going to go through tagging that C list, and then we're also going to send that out from the tenants and prospects table. And what that's actually going to be is, I'll quickly show you, is just a very, very simple sample order/quote. I actually got this template from our Text My QB app for the demo. So if you guys are ever interested in seeing this live, you can go to Text My QB demo and try that out there. I find this to be a really easy to digest example. So I'm going to go ahead with that, and it kind of showcases a few different things. So let me show you how we can get to the finish line there. So first things first, I'm going to go and I'm going to open up Exact Forms Plus, and this app is already authorized. So I'm not going to hit authorize new app, which many of you might want to do. But for this use case, I'm going to scroll on down to the bottom, and I'm going to find my lease management office hours. I'm going to hit set up another table. Now, what this does is this bypasses having to select a user token and the application, because we already know the user token and we already know the application that we want to use. Now we just have to select the table. And as I said before, I want to have it from the tenants and prospects table. So I'm going to go ahead and pick tenants and prospects, and I'll have this as a PDF. And instead of using the sample template, I'm actually going to upload my own. And we're going to go ahead, go to documents, I'm going to go sample template office hours today. It looks good. It likes it because it's a docx. It's going to give you a red little light there if it doesn't like it. So just a heads up. We'll go ahead and finish that. And around the same time, if I go ahead and refresh this page, which it gave me the go ahead message here, congratulations, it's successfully installed. I can just go ahead and hit refresh, and I will see that new template now in this app. I get this question a lot from clients. I already have tenants and prospects installed for Exact Forms Plus. A lot of people end up copying or duplicating the buttons. That's okay, but then they go to make another template and they fall into issues with their configurator or their add new document subtable configurator. It's important that you fill out the master table DBID as well. And that's not going to happen by default. When you click add new document template, those fields are all blank, where if I go and I jump into record ID 11, you can see that everything's filled out for me without me having to do anything. So it's usually best practice to just go to the cloud and install it there, especially if it's into another table in your app that isn't already using Exact Forms Plus. It's definitely best practice. So you can now see that I have my sample template, office hours 5/17/23. I have my template itself already, and I have the master table and the master table DBID. So there's a few things I'm going to have to do now to make this work, and then we're going to jump on over to Courier. First things first, and for all of you Exact Forms Plus experts out there, you already know, first thing you want to do is add your C list. And there's two ways to do this. You can either manually add it, and the way you're going to add that is by looking at your document and finding anywhere where you're identifying a field from Quickbase. So typically that's tilde, field ID, tilde, and you're going to put that right in the C list. So you could either do that by hand and hit edit, and then I could add .6.7. I'll just save this quick. Or you can use one of our configurators, for this example, the EFP configurator, and I can say, okay, and I do have this up on my other screen, but I can say, okay, what fields from this document do I want to have included? And let me just do it, actually. We'll do a side by side. So I could, pick the wrong one, of course. Let's try that again. I can say, okay, I already have 6 and I already have 7, but I want 53. And I'm like, okay, let's sort by field ID. Okay, here's 53. And I want 51. And I think everyone else is there. So I hit apply changes, close. Now, of course, I got to open back up my leases, and you can see that this gets updated. So the other thing we have on that document, if you noticed, is we have a subtable, and this isn't going to be subtable record ID 1. It's probably going to be something like 10, but best thing to do is add a new document subtable. Now I can do this really quickly, or I could potentially reuse one I already have, but I'm going to go ahead and do one quickly for you guys. And let's do and let's go to properties and units. Yeah, I picked the wrong one. Let's see where the relationships are. So if I open up one of my tenants and prospects, which is the table we're working in, and if I go ahead and look at the properties interested in full report, so it is properties and units. So we're pulling that down. We'll go ahead and add that. So I'm going to go ahead and reuse that subtable, and we'll just be able to use subtable ID 1 just to make my life easier and make this go by a little quicker. The second thing you're going to want to do is once we put that subtable in, which we're going to do right now. So if you look in the document subtable section, this isn't usually the best way to go about it, but we're going to go ahead and do it anyway. I can go in to my lease, and right now I can use subtable ID 1 still in my document template. So I'm not sure exactly which one this is. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. All right, it's coming from leases, and we're pulling across file attachment test and document template 2. Let's see, why don't we add total rent? We'll add lease number, and we'll add co-tenant name. Now, a lot of people ask me, okay, how do I rearrange these? What do I do from my subtable once I already have it? Well, if I want to remove these images, which I really don't want to include, you could just uncheck them. Now, the subtable is going to be happening from left to right. So order number 1, this is going to be the farthest left. And maybe I don't want that all the way on the farthest left. So what you can do is you can click this icon over here and drag and drop it down. So now we might have lease number as the first one to the left. Lease number is probably a little smaller, so I can maybe make that 30. And then I have my co-tenant name, which maybe we're going to want to be more like 100. And that's in pixels, by the way. And we just want that as name. A lot of people ask me, well, how do I make the label changed? You have this column label override, and you can't see the whole field. Oh, no, messing things up now. There we go. Doing too many filters, sorting. And now we have the total rent field again. So I'm going to keep that as currency. 50 sounds good. And maybe I just want that as rent. We do have some advanced settings, and I've gone through these in previous videos, so I'm not going to jump through that. You can see I was too hasty to move over. Please save changes before navigating further. You got to save your changes when you make new changes to the subtable. Again, we have some additional sorting and grouping options here. I'm not going to really jump into these too much because we do have other videos on them, and I want to make sure we get to our Courier portion of this. So I'm going to go ahead and close this for now. And you'll see that my new subtable string is used. And again, we have our reference strid equals 1, strid equals 1. All right. So let's go ahead and jump back into tenants and prospects. Now, I do already have Exact Forms Plus on this table, as I mentioned before, but I did make some new fields. So if I go to fields and I scroll all the way to the bottom, you see that we have generate EFP document 2 and EFP document 2 and EFP date 2. That's because, just with the prefix, we're just adding a 2 to the end of it since these fields already exist. But I want to put these on the form. Now, we do have new forms coming out soon, so I'm just going to kind of throw these right in the bottom, as where that happens is not that big of a deal. And we could always look at making them look better and nicer in the future. All right. So we've got our new button, we've got our new file attachment field, and we have our new date field. Behind the scenes of the button, as many of you already know, we want to make sure that we're looking at template 11. And this one, we could just call this, sample quote. FN stands for file name. So we just have sample quote there. Everything above 6, normally, for 9 out of 10 clients, you're never going to have to touch. So really don't worry about that. 6, as I mentioned, that's our template ID. And I've gone through that several times, but that's how you're going to actually select which document template you want to generate. File name. And again, for these, this is basically saying the record I'm doing this for and the table I'm doing this on. Typically, you don't have to change this. And then I'm identifying FAID, which is the file attachment ID, and EFP DTE, that's our date field, 76 and 77. And then our format. This is commonly changed. People have it as docx. They want it as PDF. Just very simply add PDF or docx. And stream equals Y essentially opens it up in my browser. I find that to be the most convenient. You can, of course, change the name of the button. So you can say, generate quote instead of generate EFP document. A lot of people want to change that. Of course, you can have, some color changes and open a new window pop-up. I'll go back down to my button, and there it is, my generate quote. And let's just give this a try and see where we're at. And then once we're relatively happy with that, okay, we have the time being added there, it's okay. And we don't have that strid equals 1 coming in. Probably should have just made a new one based off of what we were doing, but I was slightly in a rush. But you can see the other fields we got brought in, probability to close, as well as order number and date. Although with the time, no. Now I've never tried this, Keith. Can you change date created to not be date time? You cannot. First 5 fields have to stay the same, right?
Right. Yep. We have formatting options. If you wanted to use date created, you can format it as a date as opposed to a date time.
Right. If I wanted to jump to our help site quick, help right there at the top, just in case any of you guys are ever looking for it.
I think your strid probably didn't work because I don't know if you had a filter on the strid.
Right. I don't think it was for the right table, I'm being honest. But same one.
It's the document templates here. So if you scroll down there, you'll see formulas. That's how you passed it. Scroll back up right there. So that's how you could have formatted the field 1, which is the date created, in date format.
Right. And I think if I want to reference even my older videos, if you went to any of our previous trainings in the help too, I believe I go over all of those formattings in this exact forms plus fundamental tips and tricks video. So if you're interested in that, you can absolutely learn more there. And yeah, Justin, if you want to just throw that link into a previous office hours, that would be great. So now that we have our sample quote, and it doesn't look perfect yet, and we could always go back and change it, or in the essence of time, I'm going to head and move to going to make our first Courier configuration. So you have something going on in the tenants and prospects table, and you want to now send that out to a client. So I do have an email address field here, and for most of you, you probably have a client name and a client email ready to go in one of your tables that you're generating a document from. So the best thing you can do now is use Courier. So if you have in your Juice Cloud account, if you open up Courier, if you have it or not, if you don't have it, my recommendation and required step is to make a data connection. Now I'm going to show you where you can do that right now, but I'm not going to make one as it requires a user token. This thing's loading and loading. All right. So data connections essentially allow you to connect to your Quickbase account. Again, I'm not going to make one, but this is where you would go to create a connection. You would select Quickbase, obviously. You would have your account URL, and then you would check, do you have a Quickbase user token? You would then input your user token there, as well as the connection name, and you would be off to the races. When you go back into QB Courier, which I use my little sidebar navigational tool there to get there, you would then be able to jump into Courier configurations. And I'm going to go to configurations, and I'm going to add a new Courier configuration here in the top right. So I'm going to call this send sample quote. Processing mode, I'm going to have this be triggered. Status, I'm going to have this be enabled because we're going to go right at it. But for most of you, I really recommend putting it in test mode. Test mode just allows you to test sending out these documents without sending it anything live. Always best when you're making something new. But for now, we're going to go straight with enabled. The connection, I'm going to scroll down to Matt's connection, and that's that data connection I was talking about there. If you click this drop down and you see nothing, that's because you don't have a data connection. So that is required. Please make sure you do that. And then from this connection, I'm going to see the applications that user token is authorized with. And lease management office hours is the table we're working in. I mean the app, excuse me. And then we're going to go down to the tenants and prospects. That's the table we want. I'm going to hit save and next. Now the from email portion is where you can get a little interesting here. We have 3 options, and I've mentioned these again in prior videos, but I'm going to go through them again today. You can use our default sending option. That's qbcourier@quickbasetools.com. I don't usually recommend that. You cannot enter a specific email address. Do not click this. It's not going to work. That's not something that's going to work with current mail servers. So don't click that. You can use your own mail server. And there's 2 different options of that, 2 different flavors. We can provide you a mail server. So let's say it's Acme Inc., and then it would be at quickbaseemail.com. And I'm actually going to use that today. And it's not going to necessarily be Acme Inc., but it's going to be Matthew Tillinghast at quickbaseemail.com. And the very last one, and by far the most popular, is to use your own mail server. And we can connect to your own mail server. It's fairly easy as long as you provide us the correct details. If you want, we can go through that further. I do believe I have a whole separate video on that, so we can definitely provide you that, that information after, but that is by far the most popular. So we can talk about that more. Next thing is the email field. This is really the to field. So I'm going to make it email. There's an update field, and this is updating a date time, just like Exact Forms Plus updates a date. So I'm going to go ahead and update email sent date. Reply to, you could use either a specific email address or an email address from a field on the record. I'm going to go ahead and just enter mine, and then copy. So that's your CC. And again, this is your BCC. Those are kind of self-explanatory. You can either have that from a field or just typing it in. I'll CC myself, why not? And you go ahead and hit next. Now, this is where you can kind of get a little creative. This is where a lot of people have fun, making the email message template. So, I could say, your quote is here. And then in this email message body, I can include fields from Quickbase, of course. Hello, and let's see, company name is likely it. Tip of the trade, see how my cursor is not flashing here. If I were to drag and drop one over, it's going to go right below hello. Instead, if I hit right next to hello, and you can see my cursor now, and I drag it to anywhere, it's going to go to wherever that cursor is. So I really recommend doing that. It's going to make your life a lot easier. So it's a hello company name, your attached is here. Please let me know. Like to sign via sign, because Courier doesn't sign. And you can just add a quick message like that. Of course, you can add whatever fields you believe would be worth including in your message. You can make this completely customizable. We also do have an HTML view for those of you who are really into HTML. I actually get that a lot as something positive. And then, of course, we have our toolbars at the top. So if I want to say if your quote is here, please let me know if you want to have this signed via Juice sign. If I wanted to have that be, say, blue, why not make it underline bold, italicized? So you can really get creative with this. I'm not going to go too far into that right now. Again, this is really just to show you the functionality. So this is where the really key portion is, and a selling point for a lot of people is we can attach the file right to this message here. So you could either do a static file, which if you wanted to maybe have some terms and conditions that are going to be the same for every single client, you can browse your file attachments and just include that on every email. Or you can add more. I can do file attachments from, file attachment fields, and I can select my table as my tenants and prospects. And then I can select my document. Now I know it's EFP document 2. Some of you guys may have many file attachment fields, so just make sure you're selecting the right one. And of course, you can add more as well. So say I wanted to add another one, and let's do it from the same table. Why not my original? You could add both of them here. So we'll add both. This test configuration portion, this is great for when you're in trigger mode. You can test whichever record you're on. So I can see my record ID, and I can get it from right here, is 921, or my tenant and prospect number 921. So I can go ahead and give that a test right now and see if I get any errors. And we'll let that think for a second, and we'll move on over to the Finish tab. On this Finish tab, it's actually very important, especially for our triggered notifications, is how is this going to get triggered and what's going to trigger it? Well, we have that yellow button, nice and bright, which is going to give us the information for this document to send. So we have the permission types, the configuration name, notify whom, what email addresses, notify when, which is going to be your filter criteria, and then the message type, which is custom message, subject, and then the actual custom message itself. So I'm going to go ahead back into Quickbase and show you how to make that email notification in just a second. One of the other things you can do is if you have errors, or you think that there could be errors, you can always add your own email address here so that you get prompted if there's ever a reason why one of these failed. And that's a good thing to keep in mind. And I believe you also can have this separated by a comma if you wanted to include additional emails. So I'll throw Shally on here as well. Shally. And lastly, if you wanted to have an activity table or an activity log, you can check that checkbox. And if you don't have one already, you could hit check new activity table and it'll make one completely from scratch for you and make all these fields. If you believe you already have one, which I believe I do, you could hit email activities as the activity table, and then you just have to fill in a couple of these fields. Now, I thought that would fill it in for me, to be honest, but I could check back on that. But I'm not going to sit here all day and fill in these either. But they're usually one-to-one activity CC. You know, if you look email CC, it's very easy. But I'm going to go ahead and hit save and finish. And I think I might have actually closed out my email, fortunately. Let's go ahead back to, and by the way, I skipped, and many of you won't have this many emails or Courier configurations, so you won't need to skip 12 pages, but I skipped over to page 12. I'm going to go ahead and look at the activities. I got no processing details, which means that there wasn't an error and one email was sent. I could probably pull up on another tab and see if I got that email. And we could show you guys just a quick version of that. All right. So I did get that, by the way. And here's my sample quote. And again, hello, General Electric, attached is your sample quote. And please, you know, if you'd like to sign it via JuiceSign, here it is. And then it includes that sample quote. So that was my test email. So now I know that once I have it set up in Quickbase to send, it's going to work. So yeah, I can always take a look at that sample quote, make sure it looks okay. There's my copy. But right now, I'm going to go back to lease management. And if you remember, we're sending it out from tenants and prospects. So we're going to hit settings. I'm going to open up notifications, reminders, and subscriptions. And you can see I have a bunch of these already. Many of you won't. So I'm going to go from the beginning. So you're going to hit plus new email. You're going to pick a notification. This is important. You're going to hit open. If you get an error message after doing this that says your application does not have open email notifications, please send Quickbase a support ticket and just ask them to please enable open email notifications in your realm. They'll get back to you very quickly. It's a very, very popular request. This notification name can be whatever you want. I'm going to call it send sample quote. And if you remember, I said I was going to go back to that Courier configuration to go get those details. So I'm going to do that now. So I'm going back into the configuration I just made, send sample quote. I'm going to skip on over to finish. I'm going to click this yellow button again. Not everyone clicks this, super important, really makes your life easier. Shelly did a side-by-side before, so I'm going to copy her, and I think that's a good idea. I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to have this up side by side. So we have notify whom. So we're going to go to the notify whom part, and we're going to pick QB Courier at quickbasetools.com, and we're going to place that right in there. I'm going to hit enter and also add my own email address. We always recommend that you do this as a way to see if the actual configuration went out or not. If you don't receive an email from Quickbase, you'll never get Courier to trigger. That's just one way to check it. If you see that goes in your inbox, but Courier doesn't go out, then you know you can go and debug in Courier. If not, it's something wrong with your Quickbase email notification. Notify when, and you can select the criteria, and this is important. So I'm actually going to come back to this in a second, and we're going to make something, because I actually forgot, we're going to make a button to send this out. But we could also have this go based off of when a tenant's modified, hit additional criteria, any of the following field changes, EFP date, and we're going to say something along the lines of EFP date 2 is not equal to 1. So we want to say this has not been sent yet. That's going to be my criteria. Subject, as it says here, QB Courier request. So I'm going to throw that right in, QB Courier request, maybe sample quote. And then for the custom message, again, we have this right here for you. Now, something actually a little peculiar about this one, and I don't know if it's going to work or not, but there's something different about mine or my table than most tables. And that's this record ID number. And I only know this because I've gone through this app and this table a couple times now. If I open this up, and maybe I'll just open my settings in another tab. For some reason, I got this off the exchange. Record ID number was changed to tenant number. Now, I strongly recommend to all of you to keep record ID number as record ID number, but some people want to change that, and that's okay. But in this use case now, I need to make sure that I go in here and change this instead of being record ID number to have that be tenant number. You just double check that that's right. Tenant number, tenant number. So that should be good. And then type equals courier. And then again, record ID equals tenant number. And I'm just making sure that there's no spaces. There's not. So realistically, this should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead. And if I were to click this button again, if everything went according to plan, I'm going to generate this document, which I'm able to view. And then at that same time, because this generates, and that was super quick, I get that same email here. And now we have a security scan on our end, so don't mind that. But that was a live quote that was sent out to me, and that was super duper quick and super duper easy. Of course, every single exact forms plus document is going to be different. We don't expect anyone to have this exact same document with the exact same email, but the workflow is what we were trying to show here, is how to quickly and easily create an exact forms plus document from scratch, create a Courier configuration from scratch, and then send that exact forms plus document with Courier. And again, here it is. Now it allows me to do our security scan, and here's my sample quote that it just generated for me. And if I were to go and do this for another record, let's go check out Vivian. And this one's blank, so let's send that one out. Again, it's just going to let me see this quickly, some information about Vivian's. And I'm going to get an email in just a second. Super quick today. And again, this is a different record, and it's just going to take a second for that to load again.
Just refresh your screen, Matt, so that you see that the update, like refresh your screen.
Oh yeah. Sorry. So yeah, you can see that that wasn't even updated on my screen. Totally updated here. Good point, Keith.
All right, so really what he's showing you here is you can click one button, generate a document, and it can automatically be emailed without having to click another button. So
right,
triggered based on the EFP date 2 field being updated, which gets updated by the code behind the green button that Matt has there, which is exact forms plus, that says go update that date time field every time a document is created.
Right. And with that said, I get back my thing, and you can also see that this one's got my welcome letter, because if I scroll back up, there's an exact forms plus document here too, but we have our sample quote attached. The other thing I want to show you guys is maybe you don't want it to kick out as soon as you generate the document. You might want to have someone review, so you want to add a button to send it, and maybe you don't want it to be one button click. So we do provide our clients with a quick URL code. And we can say send sample quote, and I'm going to make this a formula URL, and we're going to do send sample quote checkbox, and let's just call it checkbox so there's no confusion. And I'm just going to make this a checkbox field. So what I'm essentially doing right now is I'm making a quick little formula button that Shally was nice enough to provide me to essentially check that checkbox on and off. Now, we can provide this to you. Again, there might be a few things you need to change, such as adding app token, or in this use case, such as fixing a record ID blemish. and then I'll have to do in each spot. And then there's one other thing, and I don't expect anyone to see it. And if you do see it, feel free to shout it out. The last thing is this FID number. So I can go back and I'll just hit save for now so I can go back and show you. That FID number is what we're updating. So that's the field we're updating. So 78 is the button, but 79 is the checkbox we want to update. So I'm going to change this to 79. And I'm going to change this one to 79. And I'm going to change this one to 79. Now, essentially what that's going to allow me to do is I'm going to uncheck a checkbox, check it, and then uncheck it again. And let me go ahead and just put those on the form so we could watch that. Again, new forms are coming out very, very soon. So we're not too worried about how this looks right now. But we can put that in there. So now, and one other thing you want to do, edit field properties, display as a button, and maybe send sample email. And let's make this red. So now essentially what this is doing is this is going to check this checkbox, but there's just one more step that you want to keep in mind. You want to open your settings back up, go back to your notification, search for the one you just made, send sample quote, and you want to change the notification when. So now we're not going based off of the date, because if we were going based off the date, it would send out as soon as you make a document. Now we want to go based off of send sample quote checkbox. And we can remove this part. We're going to do send sample quote checkbox is equal to checked. And that should work. One other thing you can do, and this is something I usually tell my clients to do as a rule of thumb, something like the email field. It's really important that this email field is not equal to blank. It's really important that if you're going to be sending these documents out, whatever field you're sending to should not be a blank field, or else you're just going to get errors. Should be, pretty straightforward for most of you guys, but I just want to double check that you all know that. So we have our document already. And if I go ahead and hit send email, let's see if that works. So you're not going to see that checkbox was checked, but that's because of the code I had. And that might be a little confusing for you guys, but here's what I have here. And that just came in 239. But what I can show you is if I were to just quickly undo this bottom part. What is this thing?
You need another parentheses on line 9.
See, I'm just starting throwing things around.
Get rid of the ampersand and replace it with a parenthesis. There you go.
Parenthesis?
No, I mean, sorry. Yeah, the closed parentheses, right?
Yeah. Right. So essentially what I just did that time is instead of unchecking the checkbox, I'm letting this now stay checked. Oh, no error. Okay, well, I didn't like that. So
It edited it. It did work.
Oh,
it's just we didn't close it the right way. But anyway, it did check it.
It did check it. No one ever said I was a pro at that. That's why you stick to the code you're given. But essentially, the reason why we did that, this bottom part that I just uncommented out, and I will add back ampersand, and probably need 1, 2, 3 of these. The reason why we have this part here is to then uncheck the checkbox again. The reason why you wanted to do that is just in case you're going to send this out from the same record multiple times, you don't have to have that same checkbox checked. Now, if you want this code, it's likely found on our help site. If not, I will make sure it's there after this call. That's a very simple edit. And again, here's that same document sent out to me at 2:40 with that same information. So a couple different flavors to do the same thing. I know we went super quick and I was jumping around a little bit. Apologies there. But does anyone have any questions based off of what you saw right there? Now, again, for those of you who might have an existing exact forms plus document, you would just want to add that Courier piece to it. If you don't know how to get to the cloud, easiest way, log in right from our choosetech.com, log in using your credentials. And I'll just log in again just to show you. For most of you, your companies will show right up. But I'll just navigate to mine. You'll then go into the QB Courier tile and make your configuration. We have tons of office hours videos on how to make mail servers, on how to do a Courier configuration in its fullest, step by step. So if you have any questions there, we'll be happy to answer them. But as far as the use case goes, that is from front to back, everything you'd want to set up for that workflow.
Hey, Matthew, I have a question.
Yes.
This is Amber. So, are we able to put a button or some type of approval like in the email? So like on your example, we're sending a quote to a customer and we would like them to be able to approve that quote with a quick, like inside their email, just click a button and it would send something back to Quickbase saying that they've approved the quote.
Right. That's a good question. So one thing I have here is the send prospect intake form. And that was actually from another one of our office hours that I did. And what that essentially did, that was a button that took clients to another everyone on the internet application where they were able to fill in some information. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but could that button essentially just check a checkbox in their app that says approved maybe?
Yeah, but you want to be careful with that. So you probably want to, you don't want to really let anybody edit a record in your application. So the cleaner way to do it is kind of what Matt mentioned is you can use another app that's open to everyone on the internet. You can have a button that adds a record over there into the other app, and then you can have a pipeline fire to update back your record with the approved or disapproved. It's just a cleaner way to do it than opening up your application to potentially somebody else from the outside getting in. So if you keep it in some other dummy app and you just pass along with the link information that helps you figure out what the record is that you want to update, you can certainly do that. There's a couple different ways, and if you search the community forum, there's a lot of different strategies for putting links inside of emails that go out for updating records. You just want to be careful again that you don't open up your applications to people who you don't want making changes to your app.
Okay.
Right. So
you can always use Juice Sign, and then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I know. I talked to Matthew about that a couple of weeks ago. I wish we could, but our customers don't want to take the time to do that.
Okay.
They literally just want to reply to an email and say approve or just click a button.
Right. So what I'm actually doing right now is I clicked that button from that old office hours. Now it says some of this content's blocked, but I know there's a button there. So when you click that button,
Well, show block content. Click the show block content to the right.
Right. Sorry. When you click this button that's there, which we can help you make if you follow the office hours instructions, you can see step by step. But when you click that, and I actually opened it up on this side, sorry. When you click that, it actually takes them to this other application. And because I'm the admin, I can see everything. But if I were to, test as another role, you would only be able to see these few fields and some information. What you can do is have a few fields and then a checkbox and have that be it, like approve this quote. And then when they hit save, it's going to then kick back that message to your application. What we ended up having was some information for text message reminders, email reminders, and stuff like that. That was the use case we were showing. But in yours, you could easily just have it be one checkbox and have that come back to your end.
And you can have it automatically check the box because the pipeline can be designed and configured to run off of this intake form. So when a record is added in the intake form, you can fire a pipeline that will go now and update the record in your main application to be either approved or disapproved based on what the customer selected inside the email message.
Yeah, we wouldn't even need them to open a record. We literally just need it to go check a box. That would be it.
Mhm.
Right. I can definitely reach out to you, Amber, about that and talk to you about your options, but I believe that this would be a solution for you.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.